Diddy Kong Racing is a 1997 kart racing video game developed by Rare for the Nintendo 64. It was first released on November 14 in Japan, November 21 in Europe and November 24 in North America. 800,000 copies were ordered in the 2 weeks before Christmas 1997, making it the fastest-selling video game at the time, according to the Guinness Book of World Records. It was the first game to spin off from the Donkey Kong Country series and stands as the Nintendo 64's sixth best-selling game. The game marked the first appearance of characters Banjo the Bear and Conker the Squirrel, which would later star in the Banjo-Kazooie series and Conker series, respectively. A racing game like Mario Kart 64, Diddy Kong Racing also has a distinctive adventure mode. Some of the playable characters would later appear in their own franchise titles. The game was partially intended to introduce these future franchise characters so that gamers would recognize them when these games were released. In Diddy Kong Racing, a player can choose to drive a car, hovercraft, or aeroplane, though a certain level may require that the player picks one of these. An enhanced remake for the Nintendo DS titled Diddy Kong Racing DS was released on February 5, 2007. Plot: Timber the Tiger's parents go on vacation and leave their son in charge of the island they live on, leaving him and his friends to race for fun. Their enjoyment is derailed when an evil intergalactic pig wizard named Wise Pig arrives at peaceful Timber's island and attempts to take over after he conquered his own planet's racetracks. He turns the four islands' guardians, Tricky the Triceratops, Bubble the Octopus, Bluey the Walrus and Smokey the Dragon into his henchmen. The only solution available to the island's inhabitants is to defeat Wise Pig in an elaborate series of races that involves cars, hovercrafts, and aeroplanes. Drumstick the Rooster, the best racer on the island, failed this challenge and was transformed into a frog by Wise Pig's black magic. Timber recruits a team of 8 racers, Diddy Kong, the first recruit. Conker the Squirrel and Banjo the Bear, recruited by Diddy. Crunch the Kremling, Diddy's enemy who follows after him. And Tip-Top the Turtle, TT. The Stopwatch, Pipsy the Mouse, and Bumper the Badger, inhabitants of Timber's island. Aided by Taj, an elephant-like genie residing on the island, they eventually complete all of Wise Pig's challenges and confront Wise Pig himself to a race and defeat him. Shortly afterwards, Drumstick is turned back into a rooster, and Wise Pig leaves for his home planet, Future Fun Land. Fearing that Wise Pig would again attempt to invade Timber's island, the islanders travel to Future Fun Land for a second challenge. When Wise Pig loses the second race, the rocket he rides on malfunctions and blasts him to the moon, and peace returns to Timber Island for good. However, that peace may be short-lived, as it is shown in a small scene that shows Wise Pig's spaceship flying through the sky. Wise Pig is then heard laughing, indicating that he may return one day. All of his henchmen are free from his control, and with the 2 Triceratops kids on Tricky's side, they all have fun together with Diddy and all his friends. Gameplay. The island consists of 5 interconnected worlds: Dino Domain, Snowflake Mountain, Sherbet Island, Dragon Forest, and Future Fun Land. Each world contains 4 racetracks, an unlockable battle stage and a race against a boss character. Depending on the racetrack, players may have a choice of using a car, hovercraft or plane, and sometimes all 3. Each racetrack contains boosters to racers that cross them, and balloons of various colors that provide power-ups to racers. If the player beats Wise Pig in Future Fun Land and obtains the amulet pieces and gets all of the gold medals, the player will be able to play in a mode called Adventure 2. In this mode, all of the balloons are silver and the tracks are flipped from left to right. Along with the much sharper difficulty curve, the silver coins are also placed in different locations in each track, often in harder-to-reach places. Vehicles. There are 3 different vehicles on Diddy Kong Racing: the car, the plane and the hovercraft. The hovercraft is the best at speed with the ability of bouncing but lacks acceleration and turning. The plane is good at accelerating and turning but is slowest at speed. The car is an all-round vehicle except on sand, where its speed is then comparable to that of the plane. Development. At its first stage, Diddy Kong Racing was a real-time strategy game with a caveman time travel theme worked on by a team of 4. The adventure element of Diddy Kong Racing was influenced by Walt Disney World. At this point, Diddy Kong Racing was known as Wild Cartoon Kingdom. Wild Cartoon Kingdom evolved into Adventure Racers. Nintendo had no involvement in Diddy Kong Racing Euro's early stages. In June 1997, the game was known as Pro Am64, a sequel to the RC Pro-Am titles on the NES. It was Shigeru Miyamoto that offered Diddy Kong to the game. The Pro-Am64 team was initially against having Diddy Kong in the game, but felt it was a great plus in the end. The game was launched first in Japan and the PAL region on November 21, 1997. In an October 2012 interview, Lee Musgrave, who worked on Diddy Kong Racing, said Timber would have been the main character of Pro Am64 if Diddy Kong Racing had not been made. Musgrave says, "Yes, there was Pro Am64 that had Timber as the main character, but that became Diddy Kong Racing and that was the end of that." When Martin Wakely is asked about a rumored game called Timber 64, Wakely responds, "Where the rumor may have started is at an early version of Diddy Kong Racing, I think it was called RC Pro-Am at the time, had Timber as the lead character. I'm sure I've got a badly fitting nylon polo shirt with the game logo on it somewhere." Conker and Banjo went on to star in other games, Conker's Bad Fur Day and Banjo-Kazooie, respectively. Reception: Diddy Kong Racing was very well received for its graphics and sound, but was criticized for being too similar to Mario Kart 64. The game became a Player's Choice title. It currently holds an 88.65% score on Game Rankings and an 88/100 score on Metacritic. Electric Playground stated, "Diddy Kong Racing is almost too good to be true. It is an exquisitely animated, color-rich racing game that bubbles over with character and charm. A triumph." Allgame commended the game for its very good adventure mode, but cautioned, "Don't expect multiplayer action on the same level as the Mario Kart series." Total Video Games wrote, "There are so many subtle touches that only become apparent after many hours of play and the cunningly designed levels match anything Nintendo can offer." IGN stated, "Diddy Kong Racing is an excellent follow-up to the somewhat controversial Mario Kart, improving on all of the game's weaknesses and inventing a few new additions of its own. It's the best kart game we've ever seen." However, Nintendo Joe found that, with its lack of replay value and repetitiveness, the game just gets really old. GameSpot was even more derisive, "Artificially lengthening games by making you do the same thing over and over again is my vote for the worst trend in gaming even though this is a much better game than Mario Kart 64 ever was." Awards. Diddy Kong Racing won the Console Racing Award at the 1998 Interactive Achievement Awards and also won Best Console Game of the Year 1998 by Scandinavian Game Review. Soundtrack: the music for the game was composed by David Wise, one of Rare's in-house composers. Because of the Nintendo 64's MIDI-based audio hardware, the music could dynamically change across the overworld or midway through a racetrack. However, this technique was only used on 3 tracks. This was the first Rare game to use this technique, with it later being used in Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong 64 and Conker's Bad Fur Day. The soundtrack was first released in Japan on April 1, 1998, with 42 tracks. A German version of the album was released in Europe with the same number of tracks. For its US release only 16 tracks were featured, those being over a minute long, excluding the jingle-type short pieces. The CD itself was specially shaped in the form of Diddy Kong's head, which was unplayable in certain players. Impact and legacy. Rare was working on a sequel to Diddy Kong Racing called Donkey Kong Racing. A pre-rendered CGI teaser video of the game was shown at E3 2001, but no actual gameplay footage was shown. Lee Musgrave, who led the project, explained to Drumble what the gameplay would have been like. "It was a pure racing game, the underlying software mechanics were actually based on car physics, but it also incorporated the idea of riders jumping between different animals mid-race, to always be riding the ones that were bigger or faster. We had some awesome gameplay in place, and it was lots of fun. We even had a multiplayer version working. And when you fell off, you had to tap 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 to run on foot and catch up with an animal. Fun, but it lost some appeal without the DK universe around it, and Microsoft were unsure of its potential with Xbox gamers, I think. He then explains what happened after the Microsoft buyout. Donkey Kong Racing was obviously pretty heavily tied to Nintendo as a franchise, and as Rare approached the finalization of a buyout deal with Microsoft, it was clear that the game had no future, at least with the apes as characters. We switched it around to be a Saberman game, and there was a great early Xbox prototype but someone, somewhere decreed that it was a little too old school for the kind of a revolutionary gaming experience is a unregistered trademark that the Xbox was capable of delivering, and so it started down a path of meandering changes, updates and a evolution, a unregistered trademark that finally saw it run out of steam and fall over. There were some great ideas in the game as it developed though, and I still look back to the early racing game design and think we could have done something great with that. Aside from Donkey Kong Racing, another sequel to Diddy Kong Racing was planned, Diddy Kong Pilot. Diddy Kong Pilot eventually became Banjo Pilot, a game based on Rare's Banjo-Kazooie. A Donkey Kong-themed racing game was eventually released under the name of Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. Remake Diddy Kong Racing was remade for the Nintendo DS as Diddy Kong Racing DS. Created by Rare, it was released February 5, 2007 in North America, and April 20, 2007 in Europe. This version received enhanced visuals and framerate as well as a touchscreen function to give players' cars a boost at the beginning of the race. Classic gamepad controls are employed for the majority of the game. It also allows for 6 players to play simultaneously, while its battle mode allows anywhere from 2 to 4 players. This can be done locally or online. Players can also record their own sound effects using the DS microphone, and create their own icons and race tracks using the DS touchscreen. The game includes Wise Pig and Taj as playable characters, as well as Tiny Kong and Dixie Kong. Conker and Banjo, however, have been removed. Diddy Kong Racing DS received an average score of 66.76% at Game Rankings. It has received a lower average of 63/100 at Metacritic, based on 39 reviews. Namer, an unofficial Nintendo magazine based in the UK, praised Diddy Kong Racing DS for the amount of variety in the different races, as well as the massively enjoyable online mode, but also criticized the game for the poor quality of the touchscreen-specific sections, particularly the balloon-popping game on Taj's carpet in the third boss battle. Official Nintendo magazine also criticized the game for the fact that the tracks created in the track editor were all set in a rather bland cloud setting, and also randomly generated hills and chicanes. These aspects therefore led to the final score of 80%. GameSpot gave the game a 6.7/10, praising the number of activities, customization features and online multiplayer, while criticized parts of the game for being tedious as well as criticizing some of the touchscreen controls. As of July 25, 2007, Diddy Kong Racing DS has sold 1.04 million copies worldwide. See also: Mickey's Speedway USA. References. External links: Official Diddy Kong Racing site, Official Diddy Kong Racing site.